Welcome to the debate. Our focus today is on one of the most persistent and frankly curious titles in the animal kingdom, the lion, almost universally recognized as the king of the jungle. Now, this phrase is often brought up as a kind of classic paradox, given that the biological facts, which are detailed quite extensively in our source material, confirm that African lions primarily inhabit savannas, open plains grasslands, not what we typically think of as jungle. We're dealing with, an iconic creature here, Panthera leo. Its powerful status in human culture goes back millennia, from Paleolithic cave art right up to modern cinema. So the paradox really demands a resolution. Does this title, King of the Jungle, does it fundamentally represent a modern ecological misconception, or does it actually reflect a deeper, maybe historically accurate understanding that comes from the original linguistic meaning of the word jungle? I'm going to argue firmly for the historical and linguistic accuracy of the title.
And I suppose I come at it from a slightly different angle. While the linguistic archaeology you mention is certainly compelling, I maintain that the title's current persistence, it's fundamentally an ecological and semantic misconception today. It feels like a case where, symbolic narrative has just completely overridden the biological reality. The lion is magnificent, absolutely, but its domain is the open country. And I think clinging to this, inaccurate title sort of obscures the specificity of its genius as a predator.
Well, my core thesis is really that the error lies not with the lion or the title itself, but maybe with corruption isn't the right word, the shift in the English language. The source material clearly establishes that the phrase king of the jungle is rooted in the Sanskrit word jungala. And when we view the title through that original accurate context, the designation is, I believe, entirely correct. You see, the Sanskrit root jungala, it doesn't mean dense tropical rainforest like we think of it today. It means something more like rough and arid, or maybe more broadly, uninhabited place. And that definition encompasses things like steppes, wastes, scrublands, and yes, savanna-like terrain. This perfectly describes the vast, uncultivated territories where lions historically ranged across Africa, the Middle East, and India. So the title accurately reflects the lion's traditional dominance over this expansive wilderness, this jungla.
Okay, that's a compelling argument if you're a historical linguist, perhaps. But we have to deal with the language as it exists today, surely, not as it existed, potentially thousands of years ago. If the title is only accurate because we have to mentally translate jungle back through Sanskrit, well, then its contemporary usage is functionally misleading, isn't it? Lions are specialized open country predators. They thrive in savannas, plains, open woodlands, places where they can stalk and coordinate those large group hunts effectively. Dense jungle, which is the prevailing image when that word is used in modern English, is just fundamentally unsuitable for their lifestyle. And, if we are appealing to history, we should probably acknowledge that the older historical title, arguably, was King of Beasts. You find that title in sources going way back, like the Babylonian Talmud, Aesop's Fables. It's geographically agnostic, right? And it perfectly captures their apex status. This specific phrase, King of the Jungle, seems to gain popular traction much, much later, probably during the colonial era, maybe the spectacle of the mid-19th century, P.T. Barnum and all that, by which time the English semantic definition of jungle had already shifted pretty decisively toward meaning dense tropical forest.
I see why you emphasize the modern semantics shift, but focusing solely on, say, 19th century spectacle kind of misses the deeper cultural trajectory, I think. We're identifying what is essentially a linguistic fossil here, a title so ancient and powerful that it actually predates the Western colonial interpretation of different vegetation types. When we look at the source material, linguistic experts like Professor Jeffrey confirm that jangla describes an open savanna-like terrain very suitable for the Indian lion. The conceptual title holds true because the animal ruled the wilderness, long before English speakers decided that word automatically meant humidity and dense canopy.
Incredibly powerful symbol of organized strength and sovereignty for tens of thousands of years. I mean, look at the Paleolithic art. Then its designation as the king of the wilderness, which was the original meaning, that's the constant thread. It's actually the modern narrow definition of jungle that's the outlier, the deviation from the linguistic norm that the lion's title correctly preserves in a way.
I'm sorry, I don't quite buy that the title remains accurate simply because its obscure etymology happens to align better with the lion's habitat. Accuracy has to be accessible, doesn't it? If, 99% of modern listeners hear King of the Jungle and they picture the Amazon rainforest, then the title is ecologically wrong in its current usage. And that modern misunderstanding, I think, has real consequences when we're trying to discuss the lion's actual ecological niche. Maybe we should pivot more to the ecology, because this is where the title really truly falls down for me. The lion's very success is tied to its physiological and social adaptations, specifically for open terrain. The source material emphasizes this. African lions are specialized communal predators of large ungulates, zebra, wildebeest, buffalo. Their entire social structure, these large prides, sometimes up to 15 females, using strategic flanking maneuvers, coordination, it's optimally suited for hunting where sight lines are long. They hunt with strategy, teamwork, not just brute force alone in thick cover. And just consider their morphology for a second. The sources note that lions possess relatively small hearts and lungs for their body size, which means they are built for short, explosive sprints, maybe reaching about 35 miles per hour, something like that, followed by a quick takedown. A truly effective jungle predator like a tiger or maybe a leopard, they're often built more for endurance, stalking in dense cover, navigating routes, and frequently hunting solo. A lion, which relies on that quick burst speed and coordinated flanking, well, it would be pretty ineffective and probably quickly overheat in the dense undergrowth implied by the modern definition of a jungle. Their reliance on sightlines makes the open savanna absolutely critical.
Okay, that's a highly detailed point about the specialization of the savanna hunting strategy, and it's valid. But I think you might be framing the lion a little too narrowly there, suggesting it's almost incapable outside of the wide open plains. The material actually shows lions are highly adaptable. They're found in a huge variety of habitats beyond the pure savanna. I mean, we see African lions, Panthera leo melanochaeta, not just in grasslands, but also in dense bush, open woodlands, even semi-deserts, and remarkably, mountain habitats up to nearly 14,000 feet. And then look at the Asiatic lion subspecies, which today is confined to the Gir forest in India. It hunts primarily in dry deciduous forests and scrublands. Now, those aren't wide open plains. These varied, often quite challenging environments, they all fit that original broader concept of jungla as wilderness or uninhabited place. The lion isn't just the king of the grass or the king of the plains. It's positioned as the dominant creature of the wild territory itself, wherever that wild territory might be found.
Adaptability to varied terrain like dense bush or scrubland. Okay, I accept that. But that still doesn't justify the title King of the Jungle, which, again, in modern English, strongly implies a humid, dense, closed canopy environment. A scrubland is still functionally open enough, usually, to permit that group flanking tactic you mentioned. A true closed canopy rainforest is not. The very fact that the lion generally avoids the typical ecological definition of a jungle, the habitat often dominated by the tiger or the leopard, is precisely why the title is misleading. The lion's physiological limitations, those smaller lungs and heart, make it a poor contender for that specific environment. It feels like you're appealing to an academic footnote, the etymology, to justify what is now a pervasive inaccuracy. The title, in modern terms, it just fails to acknowledge the evolutionary precision of the lion.
Shouldn't we celebrate the king of the savanna, perhaps, for its incredible social hunting genius, rather than trying to sort of shoehorn it into the territory of the solitary tiger using an old definition?
But the sheer prevalence of the lion in human symbolism, across continents, across millennia, demonstrates that this dominance of the wild concept,
The original jungala concept. That's the true meaning that has always persisted underneath this shifting surface of language. Its status transcends its specific ecological zip code, you might say. We're talking about an animal that has been an absolutely essential cultural symbol for, well, tens of thousands of years. It represented organized hunters in Paleolithic caves. It represented the powerful sun deity Sekhmet in ancient Egypt. It represents monarchy in Iran. The lion's status as a keystone species, the apex predator whose presence is critical to maintaining the health of the entire ecosystem, that's fundamentally why it earns the title king. This incredibly deep, ancient, and pervasive symbolism naturally led to his designation as the dominant creature in any wildland, the jungala. The title is symbolic of its crucial function as the ecosystem's sovereign.
Right, I agree completely that the symbolism is deep and ancient. But I'd argue that that symbolism is precisely what enables the ecological inaccuracy to survive today. Its persistence is arguably due more to narrative appeal and cultural inertia. We humans seem to need a king in nature, and the lion fits the bill visually and symbolically, rather than any kind of biological or geographical accuracy in the modern sense. Just think about modern media, for example. When Disney creates The Lion King, they're obviously drawing on this immense cultural weight, but they often depict environments that are far greener and lusher than the often quite arid plains where lions actually spend most of their time. The phrase king of the jungle is used so simplistically, especially in children's stories, without any reference whatsoever to the nuanced etymology you're proposing. It just reinforces this romantic image of a sovereign ruling a dense, mysterious, unknown world, which is largely a myth, not a biological fact about lions. The modern title feels sustained by a kind of cultural wish fulfillment, not ecological accuracy.
Yet that symbolism is the very source of the title. We're looking at a deep cultural truth that has remained remarkably consistent, even as the specific meaning of one word in English has evolved around it. To argue that the title is simply wrong today seems to ignore thousands of years of human cultural reference that defines the lion as the sovereign of the uncultivated wild space, the jungala. The fact that the Asian lion still reigns in the dry deciduous jungala of Gir is, I think, pretty strong proof that the historical title remains geographically relevant even outside the typical African savanna context.
And the fact that the African lion relies heavily on sight lines, those short chases, and large coordinated groups, sometimes up to 20 animals, to hunt effectively, is for me proof that it fundamentally cannot thrive in a true, dense jungle environment like a rainforest. We can't let a semantic argument about an ancient word trump the clear biological reality of its adaptations. The concept of the king of beasts, which is historically accurate and ecologically broad, really should have prevailed logically, but popular culture chose the more geographically specific and ultimately, as I see it, misleading king of the jungle. So, to summarize my position, while the historical root of jungle offers a fascinating academic defense, in contemporary parlance, king of the jungle really remains an ecological inaccuracy. It favors symbolic and narrative power over the precise biological facts of the lion's life as a highly specialized, coordinated, open country predator whose morphology is specifically unsuited for dense tropical forest.
And I would conclude that while the English language has certainly changed, the core concept behind the title has not. The historical context clarifies it completely, I believe. It demonstrates that the cultural perception of the lion as the sovereign of the wilderness, the original jungala, was accurate, and it remains a powerful testament to the animal's incredibly deep cultural impact, an impact that clearly preceded our modern, often scientifically narrow geographic definitions. The title carries the weight of history, and I feel that weight shouldn't be dismissed simply because of a relatively recent, contemporary linguistic error or shift.
Well, I think what we've shown here is the profound tension that can exist when the evolution of language collides with scientific fact and ecological understanding. It certainly prompts us to examine the deeper origins of even the most commonplace phrases, doesn't it? And perhaps encourages us to look past the powerful cultural myth to appreciate the equally fascinating ecological reality.
Indeed. The king may live primarily on the plains today, but his title, I maintain,
remains rooted firmly in the ancient, expansive wilderness.